Hi, my name is Decadet Argel Tidigia and I'm from the Group 4 and we're going to report about the Rule 8 of the color rig, which is action to avoid collision. So the first paragraph of the Rule 8 of the action to avoid collision is that any action to avoid collision shall be taken in accordance with the rules of this part and shall, if the circumstances of this case admit, be positive, made in ample time, and with due regard to the observance of good seamanship. Paragraph B of Rule 8 is that any alteration of course and or speed to avoid collision shall, if the circumstances of the case be admit, be large enough to be readily apparent to another vessel observing visually or by radar. A succession of small alterations of course and or speed should be avoided. Third paragraph of Rule 8, action to avoid collision, is that if there is sufficient sea room, alteration of course alone may be the most effective action to avoid the close quarters situation, provided that it is made in good time, is substantial, and does not result in another close quarters situation.
So in fourth paragraph in Rule 8, action to avoid collision is action taken to avoid collision with another vessel shall be such as to result in passing at a safe distance. The vessel effectiveness of the action shall be carefully checked until the other vessel is finally passed and clear. So now, in fifth paragraph in Rule 8, action to avoid collision is, if necessary to avoid collision or allow more time to assess the situation, a vessel shall slacken her speed or take all off by stopping or reversing her means of propulsion. So now, in the next paragraph in Rule 8 is, a vessel which by any of the rules is required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel shall, when required by the circumstances of the case, take early action to allow sufficient sea room for the safe passage of the other vessel.
A vessel is required not to impede the passage or safe passage of another vessel is not relieving of this obligation in approaching the other vessel as to involve risk of collision and shall, when taking action, have full regard to the action which may be required by the rules of this part. So by this, a vessel is not required to impede or to interfere the passage of another vessel to avoid any collision, so that you will just give them a way for them to pass by and have a safe speed, so that the collision, if approaching the other vessel, as to involve risk of collision and shall, when taking action. So you have to take action by the approaching vessel that is approaching by your starboard or the port side. Next is a vessel, the passage of which is not to be impeded, remains fully obliged to comply with the rules of this part when the two vessels are approaching one another so as to involve risk of collision. So by this, a vessel, the passage of which is not to be impeded, remains fully obliged. So this means that you are obliged to do so or comply with the rules of the port, or by this rule action of this correlate Rule 8 of this two vessels are approaching one another so as to involve risk of collision. You are obliged to follow rules in this situation.
For action to avoid collision, the action taken should be positive. This means that it should result in the reduction of the risk of collision, but should not aggravate it. Avoiding action should be made in time. This implies that the assessment should be done well in advance, for quite some time, and from a great distance. The avoiding action should not be taken at the last moment. Avoiding action should be taken at an earlier stage, at the right time, so that there is no confusion. Be alert and keep track of all targets. The aspect during daytime and the navigation light aspect at night may not appreciably change for small alterations. The alteration of course should not involve successive small changes in course. Any alteration of course made must be large so that the other vessel notices it and knows that you have taken action. As explained earlier, all actions taken to avoid collision have to be accessed after taking them. These actions should diffuse the dangerous situation. The passing of the vessels should be observed till it is confirmed that we are well clear of the other vessel. When the ships are in busy region or going in and out of harbors, they encounter lots of traffic. Here, the ship may not have set a course, and the speed may not be sufficient. Under these circumstances, it is better to stop and watch the situation as it develops. After assessing the situation, then move cautiously. If the time is not sufficient to assess, it can even ring astern propulsion for safety of vessel.